Day, and he is.
I am Aaron Tomlinson. A little froggy tonight, so we'll see how I get through this.
Well, we're going as we say in our church parlance, we're going to press our way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I heard my voice crack there when I was introducing myself. So I'm going through a third puberty.
So, before we get started, the usual what's in the glass, my friend?
Well, this is delicious, but my friends that I used to go out with would give me a lot of shit over it because
Yeah.
it's effeminate.
It's not effeminate.
It is
It's,
a caramel appletini, so caramel vodka with apple schnapps.
oh, nice. Okay, I don't think that's that's the thing. We need to
I
get
was, I
over
was
the
an
whole
umbrella for it.
we need to get over the whole gender, uh, basis for drinks. I mean, it's like if you want a Cosmo, drink a Cosmo for fuck's sake, or if you're, if you're a lady and you want to, you want to, a highball of whiskey, do your thing. Be you, boo. That's what I say. So for me, I've got some Glenlivet Scotch with some pecan praline whiskey just to kind of take the edge off. So you could probably say that this is a little chickish, a little girlish, right? But I'd be like, yeah, okay, I'm enjoying my drink, so fuck you. So anyway, we have, I think, a really good topic tonight.
Mhm.
Today Aaron texted me and said, "Hey, because I've been caught up in life this week. Life has been lifing, and people have been peopling, and so caught up with a lot of stuff. And so you sent me a text. You said, Hey, what do you want to talk about tonight?" And I thought about this because this is really central. It's an existential thing for me right now, and I thought about this about love, because I've long been fascinated with the topic of love, with
Mhm.
love as a concept and love as a thing. But I thought about this. I said, do we? Because I've said this before. I've actually said this. I said it preaching. I've said it as a secular speaker. I said that we're all deserving of love.
Mhm.
We all deserve love. And but this week I've been thinking about that. I said, do we really deserve love? Or is love earned? You know, or is love a gift? Or I mean, there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, there is.
And so I thought I said this sounds I think this would be a good topic, and I'm glad that you agreed.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
so anyway, that's pretty much the introduction to it. We're going to talk about this, and we definitely want to hear from you guys that are watching and listening. What do you think? Do you deserve to be loved, or is love something that you have to earn? And there's a lot to talk about, so we're going to go ahead and get right into it. And Aaron, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Yeah, the first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about this, when you text that to me, something that I say a lot, people have heard me say a lot, the map is not the territory.
Yep.
And when we're referring to that, that actually comes from a quote from a book on linguistics and how we do language. And language is the map that we use to describe or represent the territory, right? And so love is one of those words that there can be a real gap between the map and the territory when you're talking about love because there can be so many different kinds of love, right?
Yep.
Now, we adopted our children, we got them as infants. And I remember when we got our first one, oldest Elijah, from day one, I don't know what happened, but my heart was just knit to that little guy from the very beginning, right?
Yep.
And I remember I was learning a lot because I was still kind of, I mean, I preached grace my entire life as a preacher, but
Yep.
it's one thing to know it,
Yeah.
and it's another thing to know it.
Experience it. Yeah.
And I remember that, he was a difficult baby. Nothing with him. He just had a lot of issues. He came home with oxygen on, and he was very colicky, and he had just a lot of stuff going on with him. And so he was a lot of work, man. He was and I know all kids are a lot of work, but he was extra. And then we had, the adoption process was a little turbulent as well. And so going through that process emotionally, and just doing everything for this kid, right? Doing absolutely everything for this kid. And it helped me understand grace, or unearned love. Let's just put it that way.
Mm.
Because I thought, I'm willing to die for this kid. I mean, that's really how I felt, Derrick. I'm willing to die for this baby.
Yep.
And this baby has done nothing for me but make my life miserable. So
we're going to play this at his wedding, by the way.
yeah, for sure. And so I understood, I guess unconditional love or grace, whatever we want to call it, on a much deeper level, because I was experiencing the feelings and the emotions and the actions and everything that goes with that. So I immediately, when you brought up that topic, that was my reference point for it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can talk about romantic love, right? We can talk about friendship kind of love. We can talk about love for neighbor,
Yep.
but those are all in varying degrees. And I don't know, maybe it's a little bit more complex when you're talking about anything other than that parent-child love. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me. What was interesting to me, and the reason I'm bringing it out, is I didn't even sire this child. Like, there is no natural reason in the world that I should have this force of love moving through me.
Yeah.
But when we talk about earning love, I do believe there needs to be exchange in relationships. I believe in mutually beneficial relationships.
Yeah.
I do believe in that. But when we use the term earning, so here again, map and territory, right? Typically, when we think about earning, we think about like earning a paycheck.
Yep.
And that's a very transactional relationship. I have, and I'm sure you have, and most people can relate to this. You don't necessarily love your boss or your company or your coworkers,
right?
But you go in there and you're civil and you do your job and you follow the rules and whatever else, simply because you're getting paid. So it's very transactional. So you're earning
yeah,
a paycheck, right?
Right.
So I have a very difficult time transferring that concept into any arena or concept of love.
Mm.
So that's how that's my initial thoughts on this.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I was of the same mindset as you. I always said that love is a gift, right?
Mhm.
That there's nothing you can do to earn it, nothing you do to deserve it, all of that good stuff, right? I mean, I'm going back to my preaching days because I'm the stuff that I used to preach, but I think about this now and I say, okay, first of all, let's look. Well, let's look at the latter first. Whether or not love has to be earned, and I think that you can do things to endear someone to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that is what they call because of love. You were talking about transactional, and it may be that it's only one transaction, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still transactional because this love is because you did something. I was listening to something on NPR today about this guy that had been held hostage by Somali pirates, and he was talking about the pilot who, when he was released, the pilot who flew him back, or flew him from Somalia to Europe. And he said that he went on to this guy became a lifelong friend of his, right? So the question is, was that relationship transactional? Was it based on the fact that, hey, this is the guy that flew me back to safety and freedom, and now I feel a connection to this guy, and so the whole thing. I'm trying to really gather my thoughts here so I can really carefully unpack this because it's really there's a lot of nuance to this and a lot of a lot of layers. I mean we can be peeling back this onion for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, when or like let's say you've seen like the hero syndrome. Man rescues a woman from a burning car, rescues her child, and then the two fall in love, and it's because of or let me say this that incident opened the door. It was a transaction that opened the door to something bigger. Because I'm not going to say that it's just the transaction. There are obviously other things. Compatibility. Shared experience, all of that stuff. But let me just say this. Let me say this, and we can expand this from here. But I used to be of the mindset that you couldn't do anything to earn love, and I'm like you the same way. I saw my kids for the first time. I'm like, oh my god, I'll take a bullet for these guys, and that was how I thought. And they didn't do anything for me. They were just born, right? But I feel like they're a part of me, and it's the same thing with you and Elijah. It's like even though he wasn't biologically yours, you felt this kinship, you felt this attachment, and so did they earn anything? No, they didn't earn anything, but yet their being was the trigger. So this is what I'm getting at. I believe that there is room for both in the equation. That love, I think that at an existential level, we all deserve to be loved, or let's say we need to be loved, because when we're not loved, we do things, you know, we do things out of desperation, we do things out of fear, we do things out of anger because we don't have that basis of love. So I think that at an existential level, that love is a fundamental need. I really believe that. But I also believe that there are things that you can do, to earn love. It's like, and I'm sure you've experienced this before. I mean, I do, and I'm not saying this to boast or anything, but people say, "Oh, dude, you're the life of the party, and glad you're here, and you lighten up the room, and all this kind of stuff." And all I do is really show up, but I'm not really just showing up. It's like I give of myself, right? So in my giving of myself, I'm actually earning, this admiration, this respect that could be a catalyst to love. You follow what I'm saying? So I think that if we open the suitcase, because we're unpacking, right? Open the suitcase, and just like any good suitcase, it has two sides, right? And so I think that on one side, yes, there is this deserved component. That yes, we all fundamentally, this is something we need. And I believe that just like we all deserve to breathe, we deserve clean air, we deserve fresh water. I think that we deserve love. But I also think that it is possible, and I think that it's even, I don't know, that it's fundamental to many relationships to earn it. And that's my take on what you just said, to your question.
Yeah. So here's the other thing. Like, of what I'm thinking about the whole time you're talking is nobody ever went to the chapel expecting to go to the courtroom.
Right. That's a good one.
And so it's always interesting to me what changed between, oh my God, we're so in love, this is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with, this is going to be awesome, and fighting it out with lawyers in court. Like, what changed? What happened between this state of mind and being and emotion that we were in when we said I do, and this state of mind and emotion that we're in when we're not talking to each other and we're only communicating through lawyers?
Yeah.
So something happened,
Yeah.
you know. So and I'm certainly, you know, I was the guy, and I would tell people this, like, because when I first started, part of the reason I went into counseling, Derek, is because I sucked at it as a pastor. And I remember early on, people coming to me for marriage counseling.
Mm.
And I think the first 5 couples I counseled for marriage all got divorced. And so finally, then I was like, screw it. And I would tell people from the pulpit, look, I will not do marriage counseling unless you want a divorce, because this is the fruit of my ministry. And then I actually did kind of have a ministry in that area, so that I had even other pastors who had members who they knew were in abusive relationships or bad marriages, and they didn't, for whatever reason, they can't counsel them to get a divorce or whatever. They would send them my way,
Mm.
and I would walk them through, you need to get out of this abusive relationship. So while earning for me is a bit of a tricky word, and that's why I brought up the map and territory thing. I don't necessarily believe, except for like I was talking about with our kids, I don't know that I necessarily believe that we are entitled. Let me put it that way. I'm not sure anyone's entitled to unconditional love.
Yeah.
Meaning I can treat you any way I want to treat you,
Right.
and I still expect you. I feel entitled to your heart and your care and all the things that typically go with love, right? So relationship, I don't mean to geek out on linguistics, but relationship is also another one of those tricky words, because technically it's a noun. We have a relationship, a thing. The problem is it's not a concrete reality. We don't really have a relationship. Nobody ever tripped over a pile of relationship, or,
Mm.
there's no place called relationship land where we can go and just fix everything, right?
Yeah.
But it's a noun. And so that's misleading. That's actually a distortion in the map, because a relationship is a series of life experiences. It's a series of interactions.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I saw Carl Forehand asks here, he says,
Yeah. I saw that too, but go ahead.
for this, but Laura asks, is trauma boning a form of love?
Now we know you meant trauma bonding.
We know you meant trauma bonding.
But I was like, that's
Oh,
a trauma bonding.
but I guess it depends on where your kinks are. But uh, but let me address that a little bit. Trauma bonding creates a really strong bond between people. It generally is unhealthy. Not always. I mean, you can't put it in a box or category and say, if people bond over trauma. I mean, you were in the military.
Mhm.
I'm sure there's a lot of trauma bonding that goes on that lasts a lifetime among certain people who serve together, right? You're not necessarily friends forever because you like the same kind of music and you enjoy each other's personality, but because you went through some shit together.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it kind of illustrates this point that we experience life with people, and our actions, our words, our choices have consequences to us and to other people. And so relationship is a descriptive word that we use to describe that entire process of interactions. So
Mhm.
again, to talk about going from the chapel to the courthouse, the initial, before you got to the chapel, there was lots of great interactions.
Yeah.
I'm bringing you flowers. We're all up in our feels. We've got that new relationship energy going on. We're communicating openly. There's not been a lot of offenses. If there has been offenses, we've talked through them. We've worked through them. We've gotten over them. And then somewhere along the way, life happens. This is not I am in no way condemning anybody whose relationship ended in divorce or ends in divorce. Life happens. We grow, we change, and life changes us. Lots of influences can change us. Health crises can change us.
Yep.
Hormonal changes can change us. There's lots of stuff that can happen. You can develop mental illness later on in life. That's going to change your behaviors. And so then, as that other person is experiencing those changes with you, be it, like I said, something on the more unpleasant end of the scale, like mental illness or hormonal changes or whatever, right?
Yep.
You failed at something and you couldn't cope with the failure and you shut down and became an asshole, um, or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Uh, though that's a series of experiences that are going on that are changing. But it can also be on the positive end where we just grew apart. You know, we just grew apart. We changed. We decided we wanted different things, and we grew apart, and that's okay too. Um, so that's my piece for now. Huh,
Uh,
I'll send it back to you.
Maya's up here advertising. I'm gonna throw it up on the screen.
I'm gonna read. Can I read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
If anyone needs to go to the court, okay, I gotta stop laughing. If anyone needs to go to the courthouse in the DFW, please contact the
Gauthier.
Gauthier law firm, Divorce with Dignity, until we have to go to the mattresses. Oh my God, I would so give her a high five or a fist bump right now.
Yeah, she
That is
killed that one.
awesome. That is awesome. That is chef's kiss right there,
I
man.
know. It's brilliant. And I like divorce with dignity. That sounds so Undertaker-ish, you know. Death with dignity.
So to sum up what I'm saying, our choices, our interactions, the way we interact with people does affect positively or negatively our relationship. And if we're not mindful of that, then our relationships are not going to be successful
Yep.
or lasting.
And that's the other thing too. Like Nathan Lee says in a relationship you can love a person not like them or their actions around certain issues and yeah, you know, like I've said, I'm on the record of saying this many times that the like is if you form it in the form of a mathematical equation, like is greater than love,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you can, because think about this: when we were both preaching God's unconditional love and unlimited grace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can love someone and not like them. I mean, we're commanded to love the Hitlers of the world, right? I mean, biblically speaking. But going back to something that you said earlier, that no one is entitled to unconditional love. And I think this is one place where, the Christian paradigm, even in the grace paradigm, where it gets it wrong, right? Because it's like, okay, you just love unconditionally because God loves unconditionally. Well, does God really love unconditionally? The Noah's Ark, Sodom and Gomorrah, or the bears that ate the kids that mocked Elijah.
Oh my God.
Okay, so is that love truly unconditional? And you would have to say it isn't. The evidence isn't there. So if God being the archetype of personhood, right? That if He can't love unconditionally, then we're hopeless. You know, there's no hope for humanity. And so, but to your point, there is no one that's deserving of unconditional love because if you're a shitty person, you shit on people, you abuse people, you mock people, you condescend people, then
Then you can run for president,
hey,
and everybody will love you. I'm just saying.
and maybe win. You
Yeah,
can at least win once.
yeah, exactly. Sorry, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, it was brilliant. Perfect timing. Perfect timing. But so that begs the question too. So like I've said this too that relationships, and I don't care whether they're romantic relationships, platonic relationships, business relationships, educational relationships. Relationships are like any piece of complex machinery, like a car, a motorcycle, an airplane, a helicopter, a boat. If you don't put the maintenance time in, if you don't put the routine maintenance in, eventually things are going to start falling apart, and then the repair gets to be something significant. And so when we talk about relationships, I think that part of the earned capacity of love is what you do to maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
That if you're like you said, buying flowers, sharing a song, writing poetry, dinner dates, all that stuff, or just the impromptu dance in the supermarket aisle. All of these things, these are things that maintain relationships, or romantic relationships, and then platonic relationships. Are we talking about common interests? Are we sharing our hopes and dreams? That kind of thing. You have to put work into relationships. I was thinking about this, like my oldest two friends, the two guys that I've been rocking with the longest in my life. I've known these guys 60 years.
Hmm.
60 years. And did we always get along? No. I had physical fights with both of these guys on multiple occasions, right? Did we like each other's decisions, or no, not always, right? But we decided somewhere along the way that the bond was greater than anything that could damage it. And so what we did is we put work in on the things that kept us joined together. And it's the same thing with the relationships. If you don't put in the work, then the relationship fails. And here's the other thing too, is that when you're talking about love, and I think this is really, really important, that whether you're talking about deserved or earned, that it's a two-way street. That if you're deserving of love, then that means someone must deserve to love. If you're going to be the object of love, someone must deserve to make you the object of love.
Yeah.
And what I'm getting at too is that in order to, people say that we deserve to be loved, but I think that we don't project. We don't put something out there, like you have to put you have to put something out there to receive. In other words, in order to receive a signal, you either need to be attenuated to the signal or broadcast something to get a signal in return, right? And I think that some people aren't broadcasting,
Hmm.
or they're not putting themselves in a posture to receive. This is a true story. One time, going back to church stuff again, I'm going to talk a lot about church stuff today, by the way.
I have some thoughts on that too. So.
We would pray. We would have prayer time, and people would pray with their hands clasped. And I remember I was doing a workshop on prayer, and I said, "How can you expect to receive anything with your hands clasped tight?
Mm.
How can you? Because if I'm trying to give you an apple,
Hmm.
you have to have your hand open to receive the apple.
Hmm.
If you have a clenched fist and I try to give you an apple, the apple's just going to fall to the floor. So it's like you have to put yourself, and what I was saying about prayer is that you have to put yourself in both a spiritual and mental as well as physical posture in order to receive anything. So this is where I think, like, the Muslims get it in this regard. Why? What is the Muslim prayer position?
Mm.
You
Wow.
know,
Hmm.
hands outstretched,
Hmm.
palms up.
Hmm.
Now you're in a literal posture to
Makes sense.
receive something physically, and because people say free your mind and your ass will follow, and I think that goes both ways. Like, if you free your ass, your mind will follow. But if you're putting yourself in a physical posture to receive something, then your mental posture changes as well. Your spiritual posture changes. And so I think that they're all kind of not anything driving one another, but if you think about a circle with three divided into three sections, each with an arrow, representing an iterative process, that's what it is. It's like all of these things, they're part of a continuum, and they're all part of a greater whole. So I think that one of the things that we have to do, if you say, okay, I want to be loved, I want to be loved. then you have to project something that attracts love. So to use another one of my cliches, I used to say, you can only expect what you're willing to project. If you want love, you have to project love. You have to broadcast love, and you have to be in a posture to receive love. If you're not, you have a false expectation, right? It's never going to come. It's never going to come to pass. So how do we get to the point where, because I think this is going to really help somebody. At least I'm really hoping that it does. If you are thinking like, if you're looking for a job, right? You don't look for a job that you're not qualified for.
Right.
You have to make sure that you have the training, the expertise, the experience to actually do the job. And if you do that, you're putting something out into the universe where you can expect to receive something in kind. I'm thinking that one of the and this is what I'm saying to everybody that's watching, is that maybe you need to change your thinking about, how what love means to you, and 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 understand that if you have issues where you think, I'm not worthy of being loved. Okay, how do you change that? How do you change the mentality? So what you have to do is you have to change what you're projecting, what you're speaking, your body language, your mental attitude, things like that. And then also you have to put yourself in a posture to receive.
Mhm.
And I think that if you do this, if you take this and make it sort of a mental exercise, and make it iterative, like where you're doing it, more than once, then maybe that'll change what your signal is and change what the signal is that you can expect to receive.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah. So my thoughts go to people who are receive. See, how do I want to say this? Okay, so one of the challenges to becoming a good therapist, and anybody that needs therapy out there, if you're in Colorado, sorry, just taking my tip from man. If you're from Colorado, we do telehealth. we can really help you sort your shit out. If you're outside of Colorado, we do coaching. Can't call it
and there
counseling.
you go.
Can't call it counseling, or I'll be calling.
My name is Derrick Day, and I endorse this message.
I'll be calling your fiance for legal advice. But anyway, um, no. But one of the things that you really have to be disciplined about when you're doing work with people to try to help them in a counseling perspective, and I'm going to
Mhm.
bring this to what you said, is not everybody is like you, man. Not everybody's like us. Not everybody thinks like us. Not everybody. I mean, the way people experience life, I don't think we appreciate how different that can be for people. And here's why I'm saying this, because I learned, my presupposition going in was people need to be built up. People like people need to be affirmed. They need to be encouraged. They need to recognize the positive aspects of themselves. And part of my job as a counselor is to point that out to you, right? And I was stunned to learn that there is a segment of the population. And don't get me wrong, I don't only work. In fact, there's very, very few mentally ill people that I work with, just because of the setting and the way I practice. There are a lot of counselors that work with mentally ill people. I tend to pass on those. Um, I'm not the best person to work with somebody that's schizophrenic or bipolar or
Mhm.
delusional or deeply depressed. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Anxiety is a different thing. That's more my wheelhouse. But I was stunned to learn that there are people who have a very negative experience within themselves with affirmation and compliments and building up.
Mm. Yeah.
And I remember when I was learning that, and even now, I'll ask a client, I'll see something positive in a client, and I'll say something to them, and I'll ask them, "How does that land with you?" And Derrick, I've had people tell me, male clients say, "I want to jump across and punch you in the face, for saying positive things about them.
Wow.
Now that seems, yeah, right. Like
Yeah.
that seems crazy, but it's not crazy. It's just that people are wired very, very differently and experience things very, very differently. So part of being able to relate well to people, and part of this receiving part that you're talking about, this openness, right,
Mhm.
is really learning about yourself and learning about the other person. I mean, if I'm relating to someone who has a negative emotional experience every time somebody gives them a compliment, I don't want to shower them with compliments, because every time I'm doing that, they want to punch me in the face. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I also don't want to say they're wrong. And see, here's our problem, because we think, well, I love compliments, and I do. I thrive on encouragement, verbal affirmation, stuff like that. So it's very easy for me to sit there and say, well, what's wrong with you? What happened to you in your childhood, or in your family, that you don't like to hear compliments or positive things about yourself? That's not the issue, because see, I'm putting a value judgment on it.
Mm.
I'm saying there's something wrong with you that you get upset when you get complimented. You see what I'm
Mm.
saying?
Yeah.
And so part of the receiving posture is to recognize, and this is where I think so many relationships go wrong. And I have not practiced this perfectly in my life by any means. I want to acknowledge that. But I want to share this knowledge. Part of that being open and receptive is learning about the other person. And in a space that is, if you're interested in, if you're in love with this person, if you're in relationship with this person, if you're interested in this person, it'd be great if we could expand it out.
Yeah.
We could do it in a space of what I would call not unconditional love, but relating to you with unconditional positive regard.
Ooh. All right, say that again, because I'm going to type that and put it on the screen.
Not unconditional love, because love requires that I give you something. Love requires that, right? If I love you, it could mean a lot of different stuff. Not unconditional love, but making my goal to relate to you with unconditional positive regard. Unconditional positive regard does not require anything from me except that I regard you as your own individual, free to make your own choices unconditionally, because whatever you're doing doesn't affect me.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so part of this is I allow for differences, and I allow for understanding what those differences are. And then I suppose, especially if, well, whatever stage of relationship you're at, then you have to make calculations based on this. Is this now a person that I'm compatible with? And so I think we probably need to talk about compatibility. Because not everybody is going to have a pleasant experience with everybody.
Yeah.
Like I do not have pleasant experiences for the most part with people who think very differently politically than I do.
Yep.
That does not mean that they are demons.
Right.
They should all go to hell if they would all just pull their head out of their ass. You can tell these are thoughts. My computer's about to die. Let me plug it in real quick.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
I'm going to kick it back to you. Give me 1 second. I'm going to refill my glass because that was really good.
Okay.
I'm going to get, hopefully, so my computer doesn't die, because I got to plug it in. So I'm going to go off camera for just a second, kick it back to you. I want to hear your thoughts on it, and I'll be right back.
Okay. So, thanks, Aaron, for putting me on the spot and being all by myself.
Sorry, man.
It's okay, man. So, what you said about unconditional positive regard, I think that's really key. And this is the other thing too, is that you mentioned compatibility, and that I think may be the linchpin of this, because a lot of times we seek. It's like the old song, "Looking for love in all the wrong places." Okay, so if you're looking for love in all the wrong places, or you're constantly you're being attracted to something that is hurtful or harmful to you, then it's incumbent upon you to change what it is that you're attracted to. And I know that that sounds really hard, but it's like you may have to change your attraction. Who you're attracted to is who you're going to seek affirmation. You're going to seek positive regard. You're going to seek these things from people like that. And then what happens is that because of the incompatibility, you don't get it. It's just like it's like trying to run a Windows based computer program on a PS5. You can't do it. It won't work. And it could be the same game. Like say, it could be like, Grand Theft Auto, right? You have it for the Xbox and you put it in your PlayStation 5 and it doesn't work. Well, it's the same game, but it's different. It's not compatible. So that neither the system nor the software can do anything to edify the other. They just don't work. So, part of what you were saying about part of the whole posture thing is understanding, compatibility, understanding attracting what you attract, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Whatever you project, you can expect. So if you're projecting something that's contrary to your nature, like say if you're trying to project subservience, and you're attracting highly confident people, and then these highly confident people eventually become condescending toward you. It's sort of, you're sending out the wrong vibe. You're projecting the wrong energy. So when you think about this, okay, so back to the original question: is love deserved or is it earned? Well, you deserve to be loved, but maybe not in the way that you think you want to be loved. And that goes back to something else you said about learning about yourself. See, I think introspection is a gift. There are some people that actually have it innately, and they're able to look at themselves and self-diagnose. They're able to see their blind spots. The rest of us, we have to work at it. We have to go through some things to understand how to relate to myself. How can I understand, my own blind spots? How can I understand, you know, what am I missing here? So I think that part of it, again, part of it is that, okay, first of all, you need to know yourself. Learning yourself is key. The second thing is that you need to go through the history of your life, the history of your relationships, the history of your business transaction, the history of your friendships and all of that. And you need to go through that and you need to say, okay, if this works, why does it work? What's making this successful? Because see, that's another thing too. A lot of people think that because it works, that there's no need to diagnose it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you should second guess it, but you should always reverse engineer things to understand how they work. So even when things are going good, you're reverse engineering and say, okay, what am I doing well here? What is the positive energy? What is the affirmation here? What is complementary? What is synergistic? And then say, okay, now let me see if I can apply that to other areas of my life. Because if it works here, there's a good chance that it's going to work in other areas of my life too. But again, it goes back to what you said: knowing yourself, being introspective, and again, for those of you who are introspective, that's great, fantastic. You know, I can honestly say I'm introspective now. I haven't always been, you know, but now I do, and I do maintenance checks on myself on a regular basis, because I'm like, okay, if I'm going to grow, if I'm going to thrive, if I'm going to adapt, if I'm going to change as needed, then I need to, make sure that I understand what's working and what isn't.
Yeah,
So
I'm gonna put my signal light on here if I can.
go ahead, man.
Meaning I'm gonna change direction in the conversation a little bit,
Okay.
if that's okay. Because I want to talk. I want to save time to talk about how I think an unhealthy sense of entitlement needs to be introduced into this conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
Because really what we're talking about is we're saying, look, you, the way that you treat people, the way that you relate to people has consequences
Yes.
to the way that people feel. And if, I mean, God, I mean, so much of what we did in the church, we just preached entitlement to people.
Yeah, we sure did.
I think entitlement is dangerous. And I think this idea that you just have to love me and, you know, marriage, and I've been married for, it'll be 30 years this year.
Wow.
You know, but I don't know, man. I struggle with the idea from this, and I know you're engaged, so just bear with me with this. But I don't know, man. I just struggle with this idea of, you know, till death do us part kind of thing, or you gave your vows before God. I mean, I think there is a healthy space for coming together and expressing your love and devotion to another person.
Hmm.
But it can bleed over the years into entitlement, to where you can't leave me, you have to love me, you have to stay with me because you gave your word, you made a vow,
Right.
right? And I
Yep.
find it so interesting that what we have in this culture, I find it very, very interesting because biblical marriage, dude, is not what people think. I mean,
Nope.
focus on the family. And who was that guy, Dennis, somebody that had family ministry or something back in the day? And
Yep.
um, it's complete and utter bullshit if you're trying to say that you got it from the Bible,
Right.
because that was a culture, an agricultural culture, where women were property,
Right.
women were breeders.
Yep.
Literally, they were breeding the workforce.
Yep.
That's why, if you had more wives, that's why Solomon, you know, we read Solomon and we think he was a womanizer. They're not trying to show you what a man Solomon was, that, you know, he was human Viagra before it was invented. Um, but that's how we read it. It was to talk about his wealth and his greatness, because he had this many wives and this many concubines and whatever,
Mhm.
because
Yep.
he's breeding. I hate to be ugly and gross about it, but that's just the culture that it was.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you did not go. I mean, the story of which one of the sons was it? Was it Jacob that got screwed over with
Yeah.
Leah?
Yeah. Yeah. He wanted Rachel, but he got Leah. And
Yeah, like he had to work for her. Like they didn't go to the high priest or the local spiritual person and have a ceremony. You gave a dowry. You bought your wife from
yep.
your husband. Or
Yep.
from your husband. You bought your wife from your
Yeah.
husband. You bought your
Wife from her father. That apple
We've talked
combo thing
about,
is really kicking, isn't
I
it?
was going to say it is. Now we have talked about trauma boning and buying your wife from your husband. um, but so here's my point. So, you know, but in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, you know, don't make an oath, don't make a vow.
Right.
And the way I interpret that is, life is very, you know, dynamic. Things are going to change, people are going to change, situations are going to change. So you're almost, you know, locking yourself into a mode of operation that may not allow you to adapt to the changes that life brings you. Now, I'm saying all of this to say that this leads to a sense of entitlement.
Hmm.
You married me. It doesn't matter how you treat me, or I have to stay. I married you. It doesn't matter how I treat you. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like the whole dynamic is lost because of this sense of entitlement.
Yep.
And then, and this is probably going to get us in hot water. And really, I only had one. I mean,
But they strong.
it was strong. I won't lie. I want to say this sensitively, but for me, I've been thinking about this a lot, raising boys and whatever, and this culture that we're in.
Hmm.
And in the Christian church, men feel entitled to the wife's submission and follow my leadership
Hmm.
and obedience.
Yep.
And women feel entitled, I'm going to say it, to being treated like a queen.
Hmm.
Like we're taught that. So think about this. As little boys, we want to please our moms, right?
Yep.
We go to school. Now, I don't know about you, but at least until 8th grade, the vast majority of my teachers were women.
Yeah.
And the school system was set up to teach me how to be a good little girl.
Mm.
Because, I mean, and I don't want to, this is why I'm being sensitive. Like, I'm sensitive to people who don't fit with gender roles, but gender roles emerged for a reason.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I totally get people who don't fit with the social norms of what a specific gender is supposed to be like. But that social norm arose because it is the norm. In other words, the vast majority of people who are boys have certain characteristics. The vast majority of people who are women have certain characteristics. Now, we may have gotten a lot of that wrong and a lot of it distorted and a lot of it abused. But here's what I'm trying to say. Like, I wanted to roughhouse. I wanted to be out playing. I wanted to be hunting. I wanted to be learning something practical, right?
Yep.
And I'm being forced to sit in school and be a nice person.
Yep.
And let's be honest, guys don't relate nice to each other all the time.
Nope.
One of the ways that a lot of guys relate is giving shit to each other. I mean, the Tom Brady roast is a perfect fucking example, right?
Yeah.
The Tom Brady roast on Netflix. That's a part of male culture and the way we relate to each other.
Yep.
Right? Giving each other shit. Like, do you see what I'm saying? So you're like pleasing mom, then you're pleasing these female teachers, and then you're being told, because the whole school system, and again, we have to do something on the school system, but the whole school system was designed to create obedient factory workers.
Yep. Exactly.
To create an obedient working class.
Yep.
And for a lot of us, we don't want that. We don't want to color within the lines, if you know what I'm saying.
Yep.
And so we're doing that, and then we get out of school or whatever, and then we're taught in the Christian church, you got to make that woman the center of your life. You gotta, do you see what I'm saying? I'm not saying that. Listen, Julie and I said this to each other years ago. Like, if you don't want to be here, I don't want to keep you bondage. I don't want you living in bondage to a 23-year-old.
Yeah.
We were 23 when we got married. I don't want you to be in bondage to your 23-year-old self. So we need to do stuff to make each other want to stay.
Yeah. That's the maintenance part.
Right. But it also removes the entitlement part.
Right.
Because I think the entitlement part really messes with people and really messes people up. I think that we can start expecting things from one another rather than living this sort of dynamic exchange of life with each other that we've been talking about tonight. Does that make sense to you? Did I do okay with that?
Yeah, that was perfect. And let me share another analogy, right? I love cars, and so I've got a great car analogy, right? Because the fastest depreciating car that you can buy is a BMW 7 Series. Nothing depreciates faster than that, right? This is a car that costs like $120,000 brand new. After a couple of years, you can buy it for like 60,000. 60, 70,000. And you wait a little bit longer, you can get it for, a quarter of the price. Why is that? Well, there's this perception that German cars are over-engineered. And because they're over-engineered, you don't need to maintain them the same way you would have to maintain a Chevy or a Ford. So what happens is that people get these cars, and because they have this false perception that because of their engineering, they don't need maintenance. So they take on a sense of entitlement about the car and don't maintain it. So pretty soon you have a glut of shitty maintained BMWs out here that you could buy for a song. And and the reason why that is that people don't give them the love that that they deserve. You know, and here's the other thing too is that I think that people uh, I think depreciation leads to deprecation, right? That when you feel like you're undervalued, you begin to self-deprecate, and
Sure.
then you create this cycle of I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy, and sure enough, you take that mindset, you're projecting that energy into the world, and then people shit on you, and you wonder why.
Yeah.
You wonder, wait, why does this keep happening? Well, you're saying to yourself, you know, what is the book? As a Man Thinketh.
Yeah. James Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you start thinking a certain way, and it becomes it not just thinking and speaking it. You begin projecting that energy into the universe, and sooner or later, you know, life comes, shits on you, and you say, "Well, see, I'm not worthy after all." But the reality is that you've attracted something that causes you to depreciate your value, which in turn causes you to further self-deprecate. Does that make sense? So one of the things that so I was thinking about this, like Rolls Royce doesn't advertise.
Hmm.
Louis Vuitton, they advertise in high dollar magazines or whatever, but you don't see like billboards for Louis Vuitton. You don't see like bus ads for Louis Vuitton. Why? Because Louis Vuitton, they understand their value, and also there is no Louis Vuitton outlet.
Mm.
You know what Louis Vuitton does with their unsold merchandise? They destroy it
Mm.
because you're never gonna get this stuff at a discount unless you buy it used. You
Mm.
know, and when you buy it used, you know that you're buying used. So Louis Vuitton doesn't care about that. But you're not gonna get anything new of theirs at a discount. What we have to learn how to do is place value on ourselves. In other words, and this is I'm speaking from experience, not just anecdotally, but at some point you have to come to the realization that you have value, that you are worthy of being loved.
Mhm.
And when you change your mindset, it happens. And I'm living this. I mean, I'm literally living this. But as long as you persist in that mindset, you're going to continue to take shit off people that you're not designed to do. And watch this. Just like to piggyback on the BMW analogy, it's like a BMW 7 Series is a luxury car. It's not meant to be drifted around parking lots. But it's like if you go out and you do that, okay, now you're going to create problems that weren't there because you're projecting something that or you're operating this in a way that was not designed to be used.
Right.
Or I like to use the analogy of like a paint scraper and a screwdriver. I literally have used a paint scraper as an expedient screwdriver in the past.
Yeah, me too.
But but if you use that paint scraper as a screwdriver long enough, you're going to ruin the edge, and it won't be good for scraping paint anymore. Likewise, you can use a screwdriver to strip paint, to scrape paint, but it's going to take you forever. You're going to ruin the screwdriver, and you're probably going to gouge the wood. So it's like at some point, this goes, and again, this goes back to what you were saying about understanding self. What is it? What am I, what do I see my, my purpose or my design or whatever you want to call it, what do I see that as, and make that part of my core value, and everything that I do going forward has to align with this core value. And if it doesn't, then I just say, okay, I'm moving on from that. I don't need that. But I think that if we did that, if we understood that and did that, I think that we'll get to the point where we understand, okay, yes, I do deserve love, but yes, there are some things that I can do to attract love, and yes, there's someone out here who's going to love me, but I also know that there are people out here that they're willing to do things to earn my love, to earn my trust, to earn my affection, you know, and and that's the thing, you know, trying to get to the point mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, where I understand that this is this isn't just a binary thing. You know, it's not an either or. It's an and. You know, this and this plus this times this,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And if we do that, I think that we'll get to the point where we understand that okay, yeah, love can be. You know, I can say I deserve love. I deserve love, but why do I deserve love? Have I reverse engineered that, right? And then when I'm looking for love and someone is offering me something transactional, don't just dismiss that out of hand because that could be the gateway to to the possibility of actually receiving love. So anyway, that's my thing.
You said a lot there. I mean, there's a lot there. We could take a whole other hour unpacking a lot of that, you know. Um, but I think again, it comes back to self worth. So much stuff comes back to how we think and feel about ourselves. Um, and
We
if
need to do a show on self-worth. I don't
we
think we've ever touched that.
no, we never have. If you think about it, if you want to change your life, if somebody wants to change their life, the best way to do it is to elevate your sense of self worth or
Yep.
change your self concept because that's the one constant that you take with you everywhere. It goes with you to work, goes with you into relationships, goes with you into sales transactions, right? Um, every aspect of your life, you bring your self worth with you. So if you can change your beliefs about yourself and improve your sense of self worth, then you're going to improve your experience in every area of life. I think sometimes we're so Western in our thinking that we break everything down into its parts, right? So, like, I need to improve my professional life, or I need to improve my relationships, and I need to improve my finances. I need to improve my health, all that stuff. And that's important. I'm not saying we shouldn't break things down. But what do you do when all those areas are jacked?
Yeah.
What do you do when all those areas are jacked up? Um, then the best thing to do is to work on your self worth because this funny thing about the brain and the mind, we don't like cognitive dissonance, even if it's positive or helpful for us. So, for example, um, a quote from Don Miguel Ruiz in his book, The Four Agreements, that has always stuck with me. He said, people that are in abusive relationships or any kind of relationship, we will only allow people to treat us a little bit better than we treat ourselves. I'm going to say that again. We will only allow people to treat us a little bit better than we treat ourselves. Because he says the moment that someone treats you worse than you treat yourself, there's that cognitive dissonance there. So I want you to think about this when next time anybody out there, you've got someone that you know is in an abusive relationship and they won't get out. You need to realize that as abusive as that relationship may be, as neglectful as that relationship may be, if that person is choosing to stay, it is because that person is actually treating them just a smidge better than they're treating themselves internally with their self-talk and the way that they feel about themselves.
Yep. I think that. Yeah.
And so we don't like cognitive dissonance. So if I'm people, there can be people if their sense of self-worth, like you were talking about, isn't intact, um, or it's very low, and that person's treating them awesome, they're not going to love that person
No.
because it's creating cognitive dissonance for them, and that cognitive dissonance is more uncomfortable, believe it or not,
Yep.
and to be treated poorly like they think they need to be treated.
Right. Yeah. It's like people would rather persist in mistreatment than to accept something better because that upsets that creates cognitive dissonance.
Right. So that kind of change and that kind of work has to happen from the inside out.
And that you just said, that's a mouthful right there, because your self-worth can never be determined by anything external.
Right.
When you assign something external to determine or to evaluate you, you're headed for disaster. Because once that external metric is removed or replaced, suddenly your self worth craters,
Hmm.
and you can't do, you have to find what is beautiful, what is valuable, what is precious, what is wonderful, what is exciting about you within you, and understand that you possess these things, because again, you can only expect what you project. And if you're, it's like the old computer term GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Or in this case, it's garbage out, garbage in.
Right. Yeah.
Goji.
Yeah. All right. What do you think? Shall we? I've
Yeah,
kind of lost track of the.
yeah, look at the comments. There's some good comments in here. Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Nathan Lee. He's been very active in the conversation thread,
Appreciate
and some really really good comments too.
it. Yeah. Yeah. He says, Aaron, that mindset. I think this is around when I was talking about marriage.
Yep.
That mindset is based upon a concept that you are in a perfect relationship. If all things go perfectly, then till death do you part. Let me just say something else. The way marriage is structured today goes back to the agricultural age,
Yep.
um, and it just does. And so we're not in that age anymore. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not trying to shit on marriage by any means. I'm just saying that I think we create problems for people who are in unsustainable relationships that have become unsustainable down the road, where they have to deal with shame and legal issues and all this other stuff to disentangle themselves from something that's become toxic for them.
Yeah.
And
My adopted nephew Yancey is on here, and Yancey went through a whole lot of stuff growing up, because Yancey is gay, and he's known that he's been gay forever, and because he was involved in church and all of that, you had all of these things that were putting pressure on him to change, not to act on his his attractions and things like that. But what Yancey did, Yancey went on a journey of personal understanding. And once he came to the truth of who he was, and he became comfortable with who he was, and he began to see the value of who he was, then that changed everything. And so now, he's found, a wonderful young man. They got married, and they're living their best lives.
that's
You know,
awesome.
so I'm still tickled by Carl. About trauma boning.
Poor Carl. He's probably just knowing him, right?
Yeah, Carl, we love you, man.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
but yeah, that I don't know, man. That's like I'm having flashbacks of 50 Shades of Grey there.
Depends on your kink, whether it's love or. Nathan says, in a relationship, you can love a person, but not like them or their actions around certain issues.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I had actually put that one on screen. That was a
And Benny was also participating a lot tonight.
yeah.
Thanks, Benny. He agrees military bonds are strong. Um, I think I was never in the military, but I've talked to a lot of people, family members and friends that were in the military and served like you. And it sounds like the whole fucking thing is traumatic. It's like,
It, it, it
like
can be.
it depends on trauma bonding in order to function,
Yeah,
starting with boot camp.
but in all my time in the military, I think I only saw a couple of instances of trauma boning, but a lot of trauma bonds. But
On too. Yeah, I've worked with a few veterans who didn't see any combat. I'm just gonna, give a shout out to you and everybody else that served. Um, they didn't see any combat, but they still came out with a lot of PTSD because of the training and things that they experienced within the military structure of life. One person I could think of was a drill sergeant, and their trauma was around having to do things that violated their own
Mhm.
morals and ethics in the way they treated people. And that was a daily trauma for them, so they
Yeah.
actually came out with some complex PTSD. So when we think about trauma, and what's interesting is these folks that I've worked with that didn't see combat but still have PTSD, when they share with people that they have PTSD, people automatically assume it's from combat. And so then if they say, well, I didn't see any combat, then people think, well, you're weak.
Yeah.
And there's just a whole lot more to that. Again, I didn't serve. This is just comes out of my experience of doing counseling with people who have.
Yep. And there's another guy out here, T66. He said, I feel I deserve love, but being neglected at the same time. And so I know this cat. I know him very well. And this is a guy that he's gone through some things, you know relationship wise, and with family members and things like that. And and this guy, it's funny because back in the days when I was really getting on the grace train, he was not there, and he was doing another multimedia thing with someone else, and we used to joust a lot, right? But then we kind of kissed and made up, and moved forward from there. But I just want to say to you, T, is that you are worthy of being loved. And the thing is, you have to, again, find out what it is about you that's love worthy. Identify these things, identify your value, identify your worth, and then make sure that these become part of your core values, so that when you're interfacing with the rest of the world, that things either, if they don't align with your core values, then you're free to reject them.
Yeah, I want to address that too. He says, I feel I deserve love, but being neglected at the same time. So I have to make assumptions to make sense out of that statement. So I may be making the wrong assumptions, but I know a lot of people can be in relationships where they feel neglected, and they feel like I deserve love, but I'm being neglected, and they can feel guilty for getting out of or addressing those issues with their partner, because they feel like there's something wrong with that. And so I think this is what we've been talking about. If we look at our relationships as a dynamic process of interactions,
Mm.
then we can address those specific interactions or our feelings within the context of a relationship, to where we say, my needs are not being met. And if the relationship is workable, then both parties are getting something from the relationship. And if you're not getting enough from the relationship, then trying to address that first, obviously, might be a good way to go. And of course, to other people, not speaking this directly, and like I said, I made assumptions, uh, but it's okay to get out, man. It's okay to leave.
Yep. Yep. That's the thing. Like, you don't have to subject yourself to anything that is not aligned with your core values, not conducive to your spiritual, mental, emotional well-being. You, just like you have the right to grow, the right to evolve, you also have the right to get up and go. So I want to pick on Nathan for a minute because he pulled a Carl here. He said unconditional position regards, super concept, and then he cleaned it up afterward. He said positive instead of position.
This is the R-rated version. Well, we're always R-rated.
Yeah, not suitable for work, kids.
Yeah, there you go. This is the NSFW version.
Exactly. But Nathan, I love your comments tonight, man, and I want to tell you I appreciate you.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure. Me too.
and Benny, like you said, Benny and Nathan. They were kind of going back and forth. They're having a Socratic moment
Love it.
between themselves, and yeah, and that's awesome. Yeah, and I think that is. that's pretty much it as far as the comments.
I'm still laughing at Maya's comment, man. That was just
Divorce with dignity.
that was awesome.
I guess if you think about it though, divorce and death are really not, you know, they're not etymologically related.
But I like that though. Like, why can't people divorce with dignity? Why can't you just admit
Oh,
relationship didn't work out and let's do this the right way? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
I'm in complete agreement with you here.
no, I know, but I'm just like, I love that. I don't know if that's a real thing, but I don't know if it would work marketing wise. But
I think that in some cases it does. It does.
divorce with dignity, and if you can't, we'll go to the mattresses for you.
Yeah.
And I love The Godfather. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. So it's just perfect.
Yeah, and Maya would be great for going to the mattresses because she makes good gravy.
But can she make spaghetti sauce? I'm thinking of that scene, in the movie where he's a little bit of sugar, some red wine, and there you go. When they're going to the mattresses.
Yep, exactly. And when I say gravy, that's what the Sicilians call it. They don't call it spaghetti
Oh, no, I
sauce.
didn't know that. I
Yeah,
didn't know that. Did
yeah.
not know that.
That's what I said when
Oh,
she
okay. All
she
right.
makes good gravy. I was like, yeah. No, it's okay. But this was good, man. I really enjoyed this. This was really really good, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it as at least half as much as we did.
Yeah. Yep. All right, Derrick, you do the closing, man.
You want me to do the closing?
I'll let you do the closing.
Okay. Well, I want to personally thank each and every one of you for attending our TED Talk tonight, and may you be happy, may you be well, may you be filled with peace and hair grease.
I love it.
Love you, man. Talk to you in a little bit.
All right. Sounds
All right.
good.
All
Bye,
right.
everybody.